Hello and welcome back to the 29th episode of the Tower Sports Advising Podcast. Today's special guest is Cam Lanzilli, recruiting coordinator and pitching coach at Eckerd College.
How we doing? What's going on, Zach?
Nothing, long time.
Yeah, I know. Former teammates for a year, and now, yeah, it's cool being on this podcast.
Now we're talking shop, right?
Yeah, it's awesome.
All right, let's dive into your playing career. Played freshman year at UMass Lowell, obviously with me there. Played 3 years at Eckerd College, graduated in 2019. Spent first 2 years out of the pen, became a starter in senior season at Eckerd. Won the SSC championship and made the NCAA tournament for the first time in 32 years in your senior season. Over 3 years, appeared in 57 games with an 8-4 record over 108 innings. Really, the only question I have there for you essentially is like, what were the big differences for you at D1 and D2? I know everyone obviously has the differences. I did the same thing, but I feel like asking guys their take of like what they saw versus what another guy saw, it can be totally different.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's honestly kind of unique asking me, a guy who played Division 1 up in the Northeast and then played Division 2 down in the Sunshine State Conference, where, listen, man, I think when I was a freshman, were you a junior? So you were junior still, but I think we opened up with like Mississippi State or
Yeah, that was
and
your
would
freshman
play.
year.
Yeah, would play teams like UConn was obviously very good, and I think we played BC or Northeastern groups like that. I mean, dude, transferring down here and playing like a U Tampa, who, in my sophomore year, they had 8 kids in one class drafted, and they had a second rounder, and all these groups. And then you play a Nova Southeastern who had just a litany of big league all stars in the 2010s. In a weird way, it felt kind of flipped when you go from the America East to the Sunshine State Conference, where you're just like, man, it's the top of this conference, even all the way through. Every team is just ridiculous. So I didn't really have like a D1 to a D2 moment where some people experience that when they actually do take those levels. Yeah, I mean, the competition's just it's so stiff here. I mean, we had 5 kids in my senior class drafted, and won the conference here. So it always felt like I was continuing to push a level up in terms of competition.
I think for us too, is a lot of those guys that you played with in your essentially college season once you transferred to Eckerd were a lot of guys that we played with or against in the Futures League because a lot of those guys would come up play summer ball up here. Like a bunch of guys that I still know now that I'm like, all right, you played against. And it's like for them, they come up here when it's warm, but it's also a totally different season when we're playing and you guys are starting in February and playing games.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, shoot, we start in January, believe it or not. We start January 28th this year. We open up with Flagler, and again, it wasn't the best of conditions, but they were sure conditions. But no, that is the reality of it. I mean, the amount of baseball that you're able to play outside all year, it feels like the stimulus for a player who gets to be outdoors all year long, like, subjected to all our technology, all our on-field presence, things like that. It ends up really good for guys down here in these situations versus some of the disadvantages of the Northeast schools where, you're throwing inside in a pen, you're throwing in an inside turf facility. You can't really replicate it the same. So it's different everywhere, but we definitely have our advantages here.
Awesome. All right, let's dive into coaching career. Started after graduating from Eckerd, assistant baseball coach at Florida Southern from September of 21 to March of 22. Player development coach with the Orioles in February 22 to February of 23. Director of pitching and ascent athlete from January 23 of till September of 25. Lead throwing oh, lead throwing at Kinetic Performance, November of 23 to September of 25. Baseball recruiting coordinator, pitching coach at Eckerd College, present, and then pitching developer at Lanzilli Pitching Consult, present. The only question I have there for you is like how are you essentially doing both? Because I feel like a lot,
Currently, yeah.
yeah, I feel like a lot of guys aren't doing both. I know obviously some guys are doing stuff on the side, like they got buddies that are home and they're helping them out when they're home from their season and all these different things, right? But I feel like for you being in Florida, it's a little bit different than most people's situation.
Yeah. It is definitely a unique situation. I think I built like a pretty good presence on the pro side. I mean, built a lot of trust through some of the agencies, some of the upper level players. So obviously not allowed to work with NCAA players outside of what we have here at school, but I was able to work with on a couple different pro orgs and then able to when I was at Ascent Athlete, it was tied in with an agency there who's an upper level agency. And I built a lot of trust with guys along the way and obviously relationships. I'm very extroverted. I essentially have like this big group of guys who ended up following me from, I'll have guys who move here like Bruce Zimmerman who moves from Maryland to St. Petersburg, Florida to come train in person with me. I get like a certain type of skill set that guys prefer in terms of like the bridging the kinematic sequencing piece into ball flight physics. So some guys are biomechanics based or ball flight based, and I kind of was able to blend the two where some of these upper level guys really need, it's typically two guys, three guys to do that for them. I was able to do that just as one person. And yeah, so I ended up building out a big group of pro players who have followed me down here to St. Petersburg, Florida, and like in the off season, I'll do in person with these guys, and man, I'm at the field from 9 a.m. to, even in the fall, 9 a.m. till like 6 o'clock at night. And then in season, like a Friday, I'll be out there with pro guys, the indie ball guys, free agent guys from 9 a.m. And then we'll play a game that Friday and I'll be out there till 10 o'clock and it's just what I do. I love the grind of it. I love what I do for my career. This is what I'm going to do till I can't anymore. So I put a ton of energy into it. And then I'm able to use some like back end data systems and stuff like that and turn it into a remote process in season while guys are out at their affiliates, guys are out, you know, traveling, they're on the bus, we meet, I go through their outings and yeah, it's created an opportunity for me to just like put all my energy into the thing that I care about, which is improving pitchers, improving their sequencing, improving their usages, improving their biomechanics, improving their health, whatever it is. So yeah, I've just put a ton of energy into it, like I said, and it's become a pretty cool career.
How cool is it when Max Clark pulled up to hit?
So I've known Max for a few years now, actually, and he's done lives with us forever. He's the man. I mean, we have all types of big league hitters and prospects and all types of guys who are in there. Max is obviously very like social media driven and like a big name in that sense, but like one of the really cool parts is our college hitters will be out there with Max and like he's contrary to what people on social media want to say, like he is one of the best role models and he's such a good dude and genuine like all the way down like he's a genuinely good dude but he'll be facing Brad Lord and Jimmy Herget and all these big time arms here and like he'll go through his process, he'll strike out, he'll hit a homer, he'll do whatever and like he'll go back to our hitters and tell them what to do, like or like how to approach a guy who throws a certain way, and I think our guys have benefited from having those guys around a lot. And obviously, our offense at Eckerd is one of the best offenses in the country right now. So I think they've benefited a ton from seeing pro arms all winter through right now our indie ball guys leaving and our guys going to Mexico leaving. And being around guys like Max who kind of give them an idea of how to approach an at bat.
I think another cool one too is obviously I don't think you work with him now, but it's Matt Scott because so one of our kids that was on my travel ball team went to the same high school, so he ran their like winter stuff, and he was just like for up here, he was just far bigger, faster, stronger than everybody. And then it's
Yeah.
like you look at him and he looked. I mean, I'm a big dude, right? But like he's towering over me by 2, 3 inches, and you're like, all right, how does this guy pitch in the Northeast? And then he's at Stanford, and obviously now at Georgia. But like the growth of just watching him and like who he's worked with through the process, like I believe he's a back. Is he a long relief guy or a back end guy right now?
Honestly, I got into a weird kick of studying Wes Johnson because I think he's like Matt Hobbs. Obviously, my brother played at Arkansas and my brother played at Wake and was recruited by Matt. So we've known him since Chris was a freshman or an eighth grader. Uh, and Matt Hobbs has always been like a huge role model for me, and I have like a lot of guys like that. I'm still pretty young, so I try to, I try to have these guys that I don't just always think everything I do is perfect. So, I like to see what other guys do, but Wes Johnson does things in just such a unique way. And I was actually listening to a podcast about even how they have such like intricate lineups where like we generally roll out the same 9 guys every day. And listen, like Georgia's gonna have 15 dudes who can really swing it. They're gonna have 15 dudes on the mound who are gonna throw to a sub 4, like and have it just about every day. I've seen Matt start long relief, like tandem long relief, like almost like a starter. I've seen him throw back-to-back days. I've seen him do just about everything, and then I look into it and I'm like, just about everybody but Fulchko for Georgia is doing that. And I think what Wes Johnson's doing is like revolutionizing college baseball. I don't think you can do what he's doing. Obviously, he was a big league pitching coach for years, but I don't think you can do what he's doing on the professional side. But I think he's just turned that he's turned like a baseball season into a chessboard. I don't have my solution for it yet as a Division II coach. Like I don't think we have the depth to do that. I don't know if we're healthy enough to do that. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe next year I'll feel that way that we can just turn this game into a chessboard because I'm a very analytically driven guy. I'm a very computer driven guy. Some people love it, some people hate it, but that's what it is here, and that's what's turned our success, in my opinion. Um, he has just like changed this game into such a unique process that I think like watching Georgia baseball is like appointment watching for me right now as somebody who wants to keep like getting better and sharpening their craft.
I think a lot of what you said there too is like 90% of what we tell student athletes, right, is like you're learning, but like they don't realize, and I say this on the podcast a lot, but like we're learning just as much as they are. And it's like you remove yourself from the situation of like, all right, the gray area of baseball now is people don't talk about like when it's over, what are you gonna do, right? Like most people don't know as soon as like for you in 2019, did you have any idea what you were gonna do? You probably had a rough idea, right? But it was like in the back of your mind, you're like, I want to keep doing baseball, but what does that actually look like? So now for you, it's like you're studying so much of what interests you, where you learned as a player, like, that wasn't what interests me, right? And like the more people you watch and like podcasts and clips, and this is why social media is great, I think, but like you get so much stuff that you're like, all right, I was really good at that when I played. But what am I really not good at now that I can help somebody else do that I've already done and gone through my career with?
Yeah, no, I think you make a good point of like I think one of the biggest things that I actually learned from is like I was a very good high school player and a very average college player in like what works at those levels, right? If you throw 2, 3 pitches for strikes and you throw over 82 miles per hour in high school, like you're going to be successful. And then uh in college, like I trained and I approached the game the same way as I did in high school, which I thought was a really big shortcoming of myself. And that was like just do the simple things well. People are people don't love to hear this, but like the simple things just like aren't good enough. Like they really aren't. I think like my recruiting style is like recruiting guys who are completely different than I was. Like I was like just such a generic left-handed pitcher, four seam, cutter, curveball, changeup, like and just throw a lot of strikes. And yeah, like it ended up working for me towards the end of my college career, but like at the beginning it just was never enough and I couldn't stay on the field a ton. I wasn't progressing from like a strength and athleticism perspective, where I thought I was really good at that in high school. So one of the biggest parts that like I try to look for is like the complete opposite. Like I'd rather take the guy who already has a propensity to potentially throw a mid-90s fastball. We found some like small data points through some of our back end systems and how we recruit. And I'm not going to give away all my little tools of the trade here, but we've found some things that work at this level that like other teams haven't. And it's quickly improved us from obviously first year being here, but last year we were the by far the worst team pitching in the conference to we're at a 4.3 conference ERA right now. And we lead the conference. We're top 10 school in the country in Ks per nine. So there's been some small things that we find out that like D2 hitters just don't hit, or they don't react to, or they don't have barrel accuracy to. And you know what? For the most part, the D1 hitters don't have it, where the MLB guys have adapted to that. And that's something like you'll always see with some of the really, really good organizations is like, what are hitters adjusting to? Obviously, like there was the carry fastball phase and the sweeper phase and stuff like that. And then guys get better at that. And you see teams like the Rays who are throwing like the shorter, tighter breakers with less depth and less sweep. And they're thrown in the upper 80s, low 90s now, and they have like a huge craving for that. Where at our level, I have to find out what is the unique thing that's working, and we have if you sit there and watch a few of our games, like you'll see what our Friday guy is doing and our Saturday guy and our closer. They all do it very much alike, and we just take their uniqueness. So I didn't feel like I ever had those unique qualities. I felt like I was very standard, very strict in what I did, and very old school in that way. And now I just recruit completely away from that, and I take my shortcomings as a player and I try to learn from it, steer our guys away from that.
Awesome. All right, let's dive into the first part here is give everyone a quick rundown of how you went from pro ball with the Orioles and the Angels organizations to now recruiting coordinator at Eckerd.
Yeah, I think like one of the big things for me is like you see a lot of guys making the pro back to college jump or what however you want to take that. And I've always wanted to coach in college. Like I've always wanted to do that. I think it's one of the coolest things. Like I'm looking at our WhatsApp like pitching group right now with all of our players who are putting in we have like little gratitude Wednesdays in the morning and guys are putting in like Bible verses and then like based off what they like about it and just that intimacy piece of the college game and like the 18 to 23, 24-year old whatever we got now with some of these older guys, but just how malleable these guys are and how much you like mold their brains and you think you're a pitching coach, but you're a life coach, you're a therapist. I think that part of it and that closeness, that bond you build is something I was always fond of. And I just love these relationships. I mean, this is one of the coolest things I feel like I've ever done. Yeah, I'd just say that. And obviously, Coach Beauregard, our head coach, and me have been so close for years. I was a very competitive, very passionate player, a guy who wanted to throw 200 pitches a game and never wanted the ball out of my hand. And I think he loved that about me. And obviously, Coach Bo gets so much praise for who he is as a human, who he is as a Christian, things like that. I just think coaching with him is like one of the most like humbling and like maturing things that I've ever done. Where you see a guy who has 3 kids, a wife, has won a conference championship here, got drafted out of Eckerd, has a bunch of records here, is ultimately respected and goes about things the right way in this conference. So it was a no-brainer for this to be like a place that I wanted to settle at. There were some behind the scenes things that like needed to happen for this, but it's been years in the making for me to be at Eckerd and to be, to be a big part of this group here.
It's essentially like home, right? Like obviously you're growing up in Mass, but like that's the kind of the part that people also don't talk about as much either. It's like, what's your home after your home, right? When you move out of your parents' house, what do you want that home to look like? And obviously, your 3 years there playing, right? Those were special years to you. So, like you said, it's a long process in the making. But then it was like, all right, all the pieces aligned, and that's where you ended up. So now that's home and until who knows, right? Because there's always opportunity elsewhere, but at the present moment, that's the best opportunity for you.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. And you even kicked around the conversation of D1 versus D2. Like I look at this conference and obviously up the road we have we have a challenge every time you look up there. With some of the schools we played St. Leo last night and you got Tampa there and you got Florida Southern who has I think as many natties as any Division 1, 2, or 3 team in the country. But you have all this competition around you and you look at it and you're like, this is a real gauntlet. Like this is a real gauntlet of a group. So there's such a big challenge here, and if you're a competitor, you just look for that challenge. So I think that's a huge part of it. I mean, the part you mentioned about it being home, like I mean, you can look and see some of the palm trees in the back, like living on the beach and having a condo here as a 29-year-old's like not the worst thing in the world. Yeah, it does beat being in the cold at this point of year. It does beat being somewhere where you're unfamiliar, to be honest. Like I went to school here. I graduated from here. I spent a lot of time around here, even with like the shuffling of other jobs and trying to grow in this world a little bit and grow in this community. But yeah, this does feel like my home. I think St. Petersburg is like it's the best place. It's just the best. It's a special place. So it's been really cool being here for me.
Awesome. All right, next question is what's something you learned in pro ball that most youth college players have no idea about?
That's a good question. Yeah, I don't know. I think I was thinking a lot about and I heard a player, and this just constantly comes up with me, is like I always think about like strategic sacrifice. And Brian Bannister, like a guy who talks a ton about that, and I love listening to him. He's a White Sox director of pitching, but he'll always talk about strategic sacrifice in ball flight. But I'll think about strategic sacrifice even in the setting of like biomechanics, health, etc. What can you do versus like what is the risk with it? So I always want to like take that in like a calculated sense. Like I write return to throw programs based on ACR, which is acute divided by chronic workload. So I want to know what I can do in a like mathematical sense to keep a pitcher predictably healthy, right? We've dealt with one real injury on our staff this year after we had a group of guys who were not healthy last year and didn't have their best arm. So my biggest strategic sacrifice, if there's a if we have 25 pitchers in D1, you have I think it's a 34 man roster cap. Now we don't have that, but again, we have about 25 pitchers. If we have 3 weekend starters and we believe you have to have like 12 guys a weekend who have to be who are like your 12 guys that are ready to go for that weekend, more or less. If you're throwing 15 guys a weekend, it's going to be a struggle. Um, is improving them as a player and advancing their development more important, or is having them like their existence, their ability to throw a pitch on the mound? What is more important? And it is their presence that's more important as a college baseball coach. Now, how much can you develop a guy? How much can you take a guy's ball flight and move it a certain way? What I actually heard a player recently talk about his coach changing his arm angle and then him having an elbow injury. And like my biggest thought with that is, okay, you dropped this guy down, but you didn't train his planar rotation because your arm angle's always going to be in line with your planar rotation or your trunk angle, your contralateral tilt. And I think those are the shortcomings with people is like we always want to make changes with people, but we don't want to spend the time of what that change looks like. So I think strategic sacrifice goes along with that. It goes along with how much time you're gonna spend on this if you are gonna make a change. Like in general, are you gonna make the change with it potentially eliciting worse fall flight, less velo, and worse things worse is injury. So yeah, I've looked at keeping guys on the field as like the most important thing. I've looked at development as the second piece. Obviously, having been a player development coach, I think my MO and why you come to pitch at Eckerd College right now is to get pitching development, to be honest. And so I think that might be kind of confusing people hearing that from me, but it is the truth. But then you have organizations like you have the Dodgers who their strategic sacrifice is a lot lower than I'm right down the street from the Trop here, so I'll say the Rays. But when you deal with a budget of that feels endless, like, you can teach a guy to throw 100 overnight, and like if he gets hurt, he gets hurt. We just go to the next guy, and like, your arms in AAA are still a big league pitching staff. Not everyone has that ability. Until you do, like you really got to make the most of what you have with what's in front of you.
Awesome. I think obviously there too, but it's like you take the Rays and you take the Dodgers, right? Like that is pretty much what college baseball has become, right? So like we're sitting here in the realm of it, and you're like, you look at some of these ACC, SEC schools, it's like, all right, they have a 34-man roster. These guys are on full scholarships. Let's say if it's money they're getting paid outside, scholarship money that they're getting from the coach, or academics, right? So it's like you have teams now that play in like nothing against mid majors, but you look at those scores at the beginning of the year, and it's like I saw more 30s this year than I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, no, I hear you on that. I think the one thing I will say, and like you notice, is wait till July hits. and you see all these, and it's disheartening. We took a couple guys at the end of the year who ended up being like Power Five guys who got drops for whatever reason, commits who were going into college. But once that like summer circuit happens, and like I'm sure you remember, like in the Futures League, there will be the senior in high school who's transitioning to like a Power Five school, and they go to pitch, and like, oh, dude, it's 30 walks and 20 innings. You ain't going to play in the ACC anymore. There, that scholarship's gone, that roster spot's gone, and it's so cutthroat at this point with the reality of like the roster spots. Like you really can't blame a coach for dropping a guy. It sucks that it happens in late June, early July, because you're like, I mean, scholarship money on our end is sometimes it's not there, sometimes it is there, but in other places, like these guys are kind of left out to dry a little bit, and you better hope for something to come quickly for you. Um, but these like these minimal spots that they do have, like you just can't have a guy on that spot who is uncompetitive, who's just not going to play for you. Like every spot needs to be in a situation where they're going to at least give you something. They're going to give you 10, 20 innings at the least and be competitive, and that's in that zone. So that is like a tough part that the mid majors have, to your point, but it also comes back to like these power fives, like the relationship's super important, but like if you're not going to contribute right away, there's not really a spot for the 18-year-old who's going to need a year or two to become themselves, and then they end up at the JUCOs down here, they end up at the D2s, whatever it is. So yeah, there's so much to unpack with how these rosters are designed, and like we even talked about like Georgia, for instance, like they're so strategically designed in ways that it's like beyond the realm of like even their competitors, which that's why teams are so successful when you just always go to the nth degree.
What are you actually looking for when you go to watch a pitcher pitch?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to address it, and obviously we're looking for 25 different pitchers, I guess. Like we operate on like a depth chart of 25 guys typically. And it's not the same guy. Like we had a Max Folkman throw last night, who's like a flat vertical approach angle guy, low release, and we upshoot heaters, we'll backdoor sweepers. We get behind in counts. We try to toss in a sinker to elicit ground balls. We have a Rocco Calise who's a 4-4 release height and just throwing tumbler sinkers, but it's like 70% sweeper. We have a little change up to lefties and a cutter that we throw in there. Then you have like the more standard guys who have like your typical over the top like arsenal in a way. So everything's like a little bit different for us, but I'd say the biggest thing, and like you can put this in bold, is like creating outliers. Like what is your outlier? Is it velocity? Is it extension? Is it unique release? Is it ability to land like a unique breaking ball? I just think like we've found we have different things like stuff plus metrics, and we've kind of found we found like an idea of like what makes for such unique ball flight in a way. It's like what is going to dominate D2 hitters down the line. So I think we'll recruit outliers before anything, and whatever that is. Like everyone just thinks it's velocity. Like yeah, velocity doesn't hurt. It sure doesn't hurt in your recruiting process. But another huge part to it is just be unique, be super effective, show like a propensity to do certain things. Like with the high school guy who we're going to take, it's like, yeah, you can build the proprioception as you go, like have the outlier, and then we kind of build the engine in a way where it's like, okay, we have to teach you how to utilize your arsenal. We got to optimize like axes, like tilt axes, inferred spin directions, observed spin directions, like your release characteristic to get to like proper radial and ulnar deviations. All these different things. Like we know we have time to build that out with like the younger guy in a way where like when we take the JUCO guy or the portal guy, whatever, it's like, yeah, the proprioception has to be built a little bit further. We know we can spend a fall and work on it, but like, is that enough time? Is that enough time for you to be the player that we recruited or scholarshiped or whatever it is. So yeah, it's very player dependent. It's very individualized for us, but not everyone starts on Friday nights, You recruit 2 or 3 guys who you think can start on Friday nights, and then you build an army of guys who do different things, right? And I think we have like a good group of that right now, and I think it's worth looking at for teams. Like I think it's worth going to a college game and being like, oh, this guy's 84, 87, and the last guy was 90, 93. Why is the guy who's 84, 87 like so much better? And like we have like a little lefty yesterday who's grown to a sub 1 ERA this year, and he it's just like we built out such a unique plan for him. Like this kid did have terrible numbers last year, but we have stadium TrackMan, portable TrackMan, we have all types of technology, video, whatever we need, and just creating an understanding for him to elicit like his most unique properties. And like I think everyone who throws 90 miles per hour has a unique property in there. Some are a little bit more unique than others, but I think it's just our job to make a guy understand his value in a way. So um yeah, that's the fun part of it. But when we're recruiting, like the biggest thing that I'm going to look for and jot down is like, what does this look like 365 from now? Like, is this property so unique that we can be absolutely dominant with this? Is this property unique enough where we can get by with it? Are there a couple properties in there that are somewhat unique and like we can build a good enough arsenal to be successful over time if the probe reception builds? So I'd say that. I'd say be an outlier, be super unique, and yeah, like those are important things for like the physical side.
I think it's cool there too because you talk about pretty much TrackMan, right? And how it's changed our game of baseball from when we played to what it is now, right? And obviously, you playing is different than you coaching. But,
Right.
like, we're in the world of, like, people are so driven on this, but they're also working with people that have no idea what they're talking about when looking at TrackMan data. So it's like, it's cool for me to talk to you now about it because it's like most D2s aren't fully TrackMan. Like, I it's almost not unheard of, but, like, how many guys actually have a TrackMan in their stadium, a portable one, whatever, right? Most programs, I would assume, up here don't really have that or don't even care about it. 'Cause there's been guys that have been coaching baseball for how long that it's like, "All right, it's worked for 10 years. Why do I need to adapt to this now?"
Yeah, no, for sure. I think that's like, and God bless me, definitely have some people who have taken like who've heard my voice, who've heard my reasoning and heard certain things for why we need certain things and why they've put in certain investments into our field, into our program, into our players, honestly. Like having my background in like ball flight physics and ball flight understanding and people listening to me in seminars on how to build like holistic arsenals, and how like certain big leaguers have done it in certain ways and how they've, kind of optimized their path to being like successful as a player. So like having that backing and having people to like bend their ear to me of why we need certain things is a huge part in like why we've made the jump that we've made. I think a lot of people have had questions for me in that sense is like, listen, like recruiting's important, development's important, but like how have you guys already won 15 more games than you have all of last year? And it's like, it takes a village, and it takes people trusting you, but it takes like everything. Like I mentioned the recruiting part, I mentioned the development part, I mentioned the health part. There's so many aspects to it, but like, man, we've had guys come back from last year, like a Cam Gelwick's like a really good example. He's our left fielder and he's leading the conference in doubles right now. And like Cam was a fine player last year. Like he was fine. And that dude's one of the best hitters in the conference now. And we have scouting reports that give him like an unbelievable understanding of like where he can go attack a pitcher. We have built back end data systems through like some of our nerds who code for us and have built like an entire scouting report just on you. Like what are you doing well? What pitch are you seeing well? And he learned a ton of how he's just absolutely thumping against lefties right now. So when he gets up there, he's like, man, it doesn't matter the count. Like I need to take a hack every time. So I think that's it right there. It's like, yeah, you don't just get a big shiny toy and hang it on your stadium and just be like, recruits, come here because of this. It's like you do stuff with it. And we've been able to show that off to our recruits, and our players take advantage of it every single day, man. We have constant player meetings. Like we always want to meet with guys. We always just we want to educate them. Like we call it like the language with our pitchers. Like some of my pro guys will sit there and they're like, how does this guy know what a horizontal approach angle is and a spin axis and this and that. And I'm like, man, it's just a language here. Like they're building the language. And I think that's, like I just think that's such an important part is to like build an education system for these guys. I hope it sounds like gibberish in the fall. I hope September their heads are spinning. Like they don't need to know it, but that's how you teach, you teach a guy, you don't just baby them into it. You're like, hey, you're gonna learn the language and you're gonna sit here, you're gonna be curious. So we just have constant communication, man. And like guys ask a lot of questions and like college kids are smart, dude. Like, yeah, me and you might have been like a little bit of airheads out there at times, but like we were smart kids, man. Like I wanted to learn and I'm happy I'm able to do that for an 18-year-old who wants to learn about like his most unique characteristic with his physicality.
Awesome. All right. Next one. What separates a guy you like versus a guy that you actively recruit?
Can you go a little further into that?
Like, what's a guy that you're like, all right, I like him, I see potential, and I'm gonna move on with it, right? Or a guy that you're like, all right, he's got a game next Wednesday, I'm going to that game.
Shoot, man, I'm gonna be completely honest with this one. I think like age plays a factor into it. Older players are better. They are. Like, the difference between me as an 18-year-old, where like I didn't feel like my stuff was that much worth as a 22-year-old, 21, 22-year-old. Like I was just a better player. I was just more mature. I just segmented my week better. I was more accountable as a person. I was more aware. I was just everything on that front. I think age does matter. Like I think the portal taking advantage of it does help. Like, are there your outliers as 18-year-olds? Sure, there are, but like, I think that's a big thing. But I think like more than anything, it's like, I've built like my mindset or my data collection in a sense of like, this guy does this. If he does that in our conference, what does that look like? And you equate it as best as you can, and you kind of try to take the best predictive measure you can possibly find. So if a guy does something that's super unique, like I have a couple guys rattled off in my head right now. If a guy does something that's super unique, has field proprioception to it, the command's there with it, the body type's already there, like we're not gonna have to throw in 30 pounds to this guy, things like that if they're so-called ready. Like if this guy is so-called ready, then it's good to go. I mean, our Friday guy was at a JUCO last year and like didn't have all that great of numbers, man. But like you sit there and you look at the Arsenal and you look at like what the Arsenal could have been past there. Like there was no data there. It wasn't exactly being optimized for him. And you're like, what does that look like with my skill set or my things that I like kind of cater towards, my biases, things like that. And I'm like, that's right in my wheelhouse. And now you have one of the best D2 prospects in the country now when you have like that perfect synergy of like, okay, this guy's right in my wheelhouse of my strengths, and every pitching coach has their strengths in a way. So I definitely recruit to what I can build the best. Like I think our head coach was like a very like high batting average, a lot of stolen base type guy, and we've had a lot of success with that over the years since he's been here. And like you get a Corey Hoderine, for instance, who's leading our conference in stolen bases, one of the top batting average guys in the conference. And then like while you're recruiting him, you're thinking of Bo and him, and you're like, this guy is very similar in a way. And this is what Bo teaches really well. So you want to put him in front of Bo, and then you have the success that we're having with Corey Hoderine this year. And again, he has so much talent and so much ability, and he's such an aware person. But like him having Bo just helps him to that degree more. So recruiting to your strengths matters.
Next one is what's something players think matters that you don't care about at all?
Yeah, I mean, shoot, I do think we do live in a day and age of like there's all these facilities and social media and this and that. Like one of the coolest things I learned in pro ball was the big league hitting coach at the time at the Orioles was Ryan Fuller, who you probably know pretty well, being a Connecticut guy. Now he's the director of hitting for the White Sox. But I always thought he was like one of the smartest people I've ever met. He always like taught everything in the realm of like skill acquisition, the early cognitive, late cognitive, early associative, late associative to autonomous. And like your professional athlete is so autonomous. And your college group, like some of your older, more experienced guys will be like relatively autonomous. My brother was always very autonomous ever since he was probably like a freshman in high school. It felt like it just everything became so reactive and like 1% to him. But yeah, you gotta like separate the understanding of like what's an associative athlete versus what's an autonomous athlete. So we have, you'll have like a freshman come in with like a whole set of plyo drills that you're like, did you watch this on a TikTok? Like, did you like what about this is going to help you get better? What about this is building proprioception for you? What about this is going to help you do the act? And the skill's always a skill. So yeah, we there's so much fluff in this, and like guys come in and like they get humbled a little bit in a way because their remote training coach will hit them with like a spin drill with a red plyo and then pick up a blue plyo and throw it left-handed and then throw it submarine and do this and that. I'm like, man, like you are paying for something that's not helping you, and it's not helping you drive skill, and it's not helping you acquire skill. That's all that matters at the end of the day is how much skill do you acquire. Like you think of yourself as a hitter, man. Like I've seen a version of you that was like so incredibly difficult to pitch against, and you're like, what do you throw this guy? And obviously that comes through your maturation, but that also comes through the fact that you drove skill in a certain act, right? Like you didn't sit there, hit off the tee for hours and expect to get better at hitting a 20-inch sweeper from like a 3'6" release, right? You work on the act. For our guys, everyone has something they need to work on, and man, I'm sorry, it's just not going to happen throwing 3 feet away from a plyo wall with like the new freaking Otani drill. Like that's just not how it happens, unfortunately. And listen, I'm a plyo guy. I'm a drill guy. I like the isolated like external environment and like kind of coddling that at times. But at the end of the day, you really got to build more difficult external environments for guys. And like, I watched Fuller make Kobe Mayo with like a flat bat, like that could not, I don't know, if I took 100 swings with, I wouldn't have made contact with, facing like 100-mile-per-hour dimple balls with like 40 inches of ride. It's like you were going way past like a difficult external environment. You were putting him in an impossible external environment. So we have pitchers do all types of things. Like we've worked with some sports science labs, put glasses on our guys, look at their focalization and try to figure out that stuff. Um, we've done all types of things. I've had a pitcher try to replicate a kid who was struggling through strikes, try to replicate every single player on our pitching staff's delivery to just like make his mind move just like a little bit more, make him think of the task a little bit more. Okay, how am I going to deliver? Like, how is my brain going to create this movement where I'm going to deliver a ball from right here and throw it for a strike, and then I'm going to deliver one from here, and like, how am I going to use like my ball flight in like my intended location to do this? So yeah, like creating difficult external environments is important. I think it's like one of the most important things, to be honest. So it makes the game easier. It makes your development easier. There's so many levels to it.
We're moving into pitching development. My first question was going to be what's the biggest misconception in pitching development right now, but it's clearly throwing a plyo ball at 3 feet in front of you, right?
Yeah, it's just yeah, we have so many coaches, and there's a lot of good ones, but like in any industry, there's going to be guys who don't meet the boat. Yeah, you got to be knowledgeable about who you're working with, what you're doing, and making sure that it's eliciting a stimulus that's kind of like pushing towards like acquiring skill.
I mean, I say it all the time to recruits, people, parents, players, guys like us, right? Like when you're doing all these things, you're buying a coaching staff, you're not buying the logo and you're not buying these different things. So it's like you want athletes and parents to do the same essentially homework on the person that they're working with as the program they're trying to get into. So it's like I feel like people are like trying to get obviously there's coaches that are trying to get the quick buck, right? Of like I can help you. Like do your
Yep.
research. Yes, if that's the hole in the wall that might help you, sure, like go ahead, do it. But it's like do your research on the person that's trying to help you. It's like I talk to recruits that we work with. I'm like who have you worked with in the past? Who do you play for? Who do you do this? Because it's like we live in a world where it's built off of like lies that, hey, I know a coach in Florida. I know Coach Lanzilli. I can get him on the phone, right? Like if you don't know the person, just say you don't know the person. Like
You're right.
I think that's the biggest misconception I see in any development right now is it's like play for my travel team, play for my whatever team, play for my national team, right? if you don't have the connections, like that's where I feel like kids are getting lied to even more now because it's like,
Yeah.
oh, I can call him on the phone. Like if you don't have his phone number, how are you going to call him? Yeah, sure, you can reach out with a blind Twitter message, but like, what's the guarantee that he's going to reach out and answer that way?
Yeah. No, that's exactly it. And again, even when I used to work in the private space, I'd have a guy like reach out to me and be like, "Hey, I just want just give me a new plyo routine." And I'm like, What? Like, no, I'm not gonna do that. Like that's just not how I work. I'm not in the I'm not in the realm of like faking it, you know. It's of like
You want the investment. Like you've
yeah.
learned so much to give it to other people. Like that's why I've not removed myself from travel baseball and privates and all that, but it's like the part I enjoy most is sitting here talking to you guys or like, "Hey, I got this kid. What do you think?" Like at the worst, you're going to tell me, "Hey, this kid isn't good enough for me." But like at least I have the gratification to go tell that recruit like, "Hey, you're wasting your time here.
Yeah.
You're just spending all this time like I want to go to Eckerd College and this isn't something that I want to bring in." So I think that gap for me, and that's what it took me a long time to realize after playing and obviously coaching and lessons and whatever, right? And obviously I coached a little bit of college baseball, but like that was the gap that I had fun with. Like, I
Sure.
want that gratification that most people can't provide to an athlete of like, I really want to go to this school down the street. Well, they really don't need a shortstop and they're not
Yeah.
going to take you because I
Yeah.
feel like that gray area is where most kids are kind of stuck because they're like, this is my number one school. I want to go here. Well, that number one school doesn't want you. And if you don't know people that are in the realm of that
Uh,
school, how are you going to know if you can go there?
right. Yeah. No. Shoot, that's I do make the joke to a lot of people where I'm like, yeah, every kid wants to go to LSU, but not every kid thinks they can play at LSU. Every kid, a good chunk of kids want to go play at Eckerd College, but everyone thinks they can play at Eckerd College. So we get the most emails out of anyone because everyone has the mindset that they can do it. But yeah, you have a good point in the sense of like, like our relationship or some of the relationships that we have, we're able to, mitigate like the entire like, hey, this guy has emailed me 20 times. Like, I don't think he's gotten the hint that like we don't need a 2029 second baseman right now. Like, so, yeah, no, you make a good point there.
All right. Next one is velocity versus command. What wins long term?
Yeah, both. They both do. Shoot, I think if you can do both, like you have like a really good pitcher. I mean, hopefully, shoot, I try to have all of our guys do that. I think our biggest, actually our staff's biggest like broad thing before going into expected numbers, XWOBA, this, that, and the other, it's like strikeout percentage to walk percentage. If we're over 12.5% for the year, we're I think the best in the country last year was like North Greenville, I want to say. They were at like 15%. I would say if we're at 12.5%, that's our expectation. If we get to 15%, we're the best. Um, so the strikeout to walk percentage matters, and I think both of those contribute to that right there.
I think
Sorry,
there
I
too.
didn't give you the cool
No,
answer
no,
that
no,
you're
that's
hoping.
fine, but most people would say one or the other, so it's cool to have your take of, like, both. Obviously, both is always gonna be the better pitcher, but it's like, what you brought up is more important to me because it's like, think about when we played, right? What was always the saying as a pitching staff? More Ks, less walks. That hasn't changed in I don't know how many years, right? But it's like, now you have all this data to help you on the back end be like, all right, this is why we're getting more Ks, or this is
Exactly.
why we're getting more walks. And like you
Yeah.
said, to your point there is like, I don't know what your guys' staff's numbers were last year, but I'm sure they're better this year because you've implemented a thing that they didn't have. And that's where I think that the TrackMan and all these different things, data wise, help kids essentially that not are clueless, but are guys that want to learn that didn't have a plan in place to learn.
Yeah, I think contrary to popular belief, just screaming, let's strike out more guys and walk less doesn't work. Like that just say the simple act of that just doesn't work. So yeah, I mean, man, to elicit like unique properties, like I talked about vertical approach angle as one of them, whether it's steep or whether it's flat, it's like you have to have command to do that. Like Jamie Arnold could be a bad pitcher at Florida State if he's throwing all of his fastballs to the bottom of the zone. But luckily you have a Micah Posey who's smart enough to be like, hey, let's miss elevate it here. let's flatten this angle versus like we have a Nick Rainey who threw for us yesterday, who's like a very vertical release guy. And it's like, hey, we have to angle all of our fastballs to create as close to 6, 7 degrees of -6, -7 degrees of vertical approach angle as possible, just to create any angle that's away from 5 degrees and get away from hitters' attack angles. So you don't want to meet, like, think about what you thought about as a hitter all the time. You thought about matching the plane of the pitcher's fastball or breaking ball, whatever it is, and we just try to oppose that.
All right, diving into the last question on pitching development. If a 15-year-old pitcher came to you and said, "I want to play college baseball," what would be your step-by-step plan?
Yeah, shoot. Bo Bo has 2 kids who are around that age right now, and I'm like, dude, why don't you ever think about putting on 20 pounds? I think everybody who's on our staff who gets considerable innings and like throws with decent velocity or, has physicality, like even all of our freshmen who are around, pitching at this point, they're all minimum, like I'd say 195 at this point. I'd say just like you have to be physical to be in the conversation. Like unless you were doing something so unique at 175 pounds, like I think it's really tough to do it. Like we do have a guy who's about a buck 80 for us who dominates, but he's not a high velocity guy. It's just like super unique arm angle, things like that. And like God bless him. Like he found something that worked for him, and we were able to elicit like some unique properties for him so he could dominate. Yeah, I'd say like man, I go into the calf and like eat with the guys sometimes, and like our captain who is our closer right now, like I'll have a piece of chicken on my plate, and he'll be like, "Why is that not 5 pieces of chicken? Like you're sub 100 grams of protein at lunch today. Like what's wrong with you?" And yeah, we do have that like eat big, like be big, throw hard mentality, and then we backtrack from there. And obviously, there's other pieces to it, but like if that's something you can control, like you got to do it.
I mean, I think that's like the biggest thing that anyone talks about now, right? Is like gain weight, gain weight, gain weight. Or like when we were getting recruited, like, dude, you were either big or you were small. Like nobody
Yeah,
cared to like hit the weight room, eat more food, do these things. But like we're in the world of recruiting's ever changing now, right? And
yeah.
you're stuck in that like, all right, well, the recruit that they're going after might be 185 and I'm 175. If I get the 185, I might be the front runner. So like that's where the value of that, I think the biggest thing you can tell kids now is you're never big enough. Unless you're 6'5", 250, like it doesn't you're big enough, right? But everyone
Right.
else is just like how many guys do you go to a recruiting event and see the guy that's 5'11" to 6'1" at a buck 65?
Yeah, I mean, usually they're not the most successful guy on the field, unfortunately, And there's small places for them, but like there's few guys who are 170 pounds where you're not like, wow, this guy wouldn't be better if he put on another 10 to 15 pounds. And some people take it serious, some people don't, and that's their choice.
All right, moving on to mindset and pitching IQ. What do elite pitchers understand that others often don't?
I'd say like one of the important parts is like, and I always talk about like creating good predictive outcomes. I think that's like the most important thing you can do as a pitcher because I don't control if a guy like leads one over our first baseman's head. Like our goal was to create soft contact, ideally on the ground and ideally not in the air to the pull side. You know, if that's something we can control, that's a good predictive outcome. So it's our two biggest like I'd say like two of our biggest things that we're looking for is like guys who create a lot of whiff and like limiting slug. And we've run like a sub 350 slug as a pitching staff this year, and like, extra base hits are killers. You know, we don't like facing the Zack Towers and letting them see fastballs right down the middle. It's just not a good it's not a it's not a winning formula. But then again, we had a guy last night who previously had boat raced us on first pitch breakers. So you just learn from it and you create the greatest predictive outcome possible. Yeah, your ERA is just not really reflective of that. Like I mean, going back to the recruiting conversation in this sense, like we don't recruit to ERAs. Like we never do. I could care less about it, especially being a JUCO pitcher who throws 20, 30 innings. You could have thrown very similarly, it's like a 2.5 ERA as you did a 5 ERA, and like I didn't see that game. Like I didn't see the scorekeeper decided not to call the shortstop the error that day that cost you 2 runs, or the umpire blew 3 calls on X, Y, and Z. There's so many external pieces that go into an ERA that just like doesn't really matter to me.
I think ERA is kinda not a lost, like, love, but I feel like more guys are moving away from it, recruiting-wise, obviously not playing time college-wise, right? That's 2 different worlds, but,
Yeah.
like you said, I think important for a lot of recruits to understand is, like, you can't be at everything, right? Like, even if you sign a guy, right, and he's sending you video, which I'm sure most guys are, of, like, that's the hardest part of guys wanting to be like, "Alright, well, I posted on Twitter my ERA,"
Yeah.
and it's like, "W I don't care because I didn't see the whole game."
Right. Right. Yeah, I think recruits send that all the time, and I'm like, tell me more of the story here. Like being descriptive's not a bad thing.
Right. Alright, last couple questions to kinda wrap up here. For social media, obviously, Twitter's the big one for guys. What type of videos actually catch your attention online?
Man, I sometimes it's just so out of guys' control. Like it's the video in college baseball is not quite what you get in football and basketball and stuff like that. I think side video is a great thing, like open side always, not backside. Like backside doesn't do a ton for me. Open side's important, and then always from like the behind pitcher view is probably always the best. I'm mentioning social media, like I think you mentioned it, like Twitter being like the big one, or X, whatever they're calling it now. But yeah, Twitter is like a great thing, man. It is where a lot of conversations start. I think coaches being on Twitter for their players, like high school coaches, travel ball coaches, is like kind of a rare thing at this point, and something they should really take an effort into, especially as it benefits a program when a guy gets drafted or a guy goes to play at a really good college or wherever. So I don't know why people don't take that more seriously, but Twitter DMs are typically always seen by coaches, where emails get, I mean, dude, we get 100 plus a day. And like just like a big description. It's like I love reading. I love but I grew up with an English teacher as a mom, but like I'm not reading every email. I'm just not. I'm not. We aren't recruiting obviously past 2 years at this point because we're not allowed to. But like we don't have any 2027 commits right now. Like I'm not going to go over the hills for it until this summer, really. Anyway, so I'd say being visible on Twitter is a good thing. But also just like not so like chat GPT-ish with it, and being more like a little bit direct, like, hey, I've been to St. Petersburg. I love the school. This is my fastball. Here's my TrackMan data. Here's my stats from the year. Would love to be in contact. Like things like that. It can be simple but descriptive at the same time.
I think that, like, sums it up, right? Like, kids are so, like, trying to be what they're not, where
Mm,
it's like, dude, if you speak English that's broken English and you're not a great speaker, like, and that's the way you type and the way you text and the way you do all these things, like, that's okay. Like, you don't need to
yeah,
sound like somebody you're not. So I
sure.
think that because coaches obviously pick up on that, whereas the recruits, like, I don't care, like, it looks better. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
when they meet you, that's not what you are.
Yeah. Yeah, and also being honest towards your strengths. Like, hey, I'm I'm a scrappy guy. I've had guys send me like backside blooper singles over the first baseman's head and been like 136 exit velo, and I'm like, dude, you're hitting 350 this year. Like, it's fine to not be the guy who hits a ball 110. Yeah, just being honest with yourself and what your strengths are, definitely.
All right, we're gonna wrap it up here with rapid fire. So quick answers, you pick and like keep it as short as possible. Velocity or command if you had to pick one.
Velocity as a recruiter.
Okay. Starter or reliever mindset.
Relievers are sexy right now.
Best pitch in baseball right now.
Sweeper.
Most overrated stat.
I'm just going to stick with pitching ones. ERA is not a good stat.
Most underrated trait in pitchers.
Competitiveness.
One word to describe a recruit you love.
Competitive.
One word to describe a recruit you would avoid.
Ego.
I figured you were going to say that. I think that's kind of whether it's coaching or players now. I think that's like the biggest thing that has ruined our game.
Yeah, I think shoot. I think I think recruits wanting in the initial process a coach to sell them on the school and not the recruit selling themselves or in like a mutual way is like an immediate like, hey man, like I don't think this is a good fit. Like, and I mean, it happens weekly with us where it's like, hey, liked you as a player, maybe this isn't a great fit because dude, the person matters. And I never realized how much it matters exactly until, this fall.
If you could give one piece of advice to every pitcher trying to play college baseball right now, what would it be?
Yeah, dude, be strong, have gratitude for the game, be accountable as hell.
And where can players or people that are listening to our podcast find you and learn from you?
Yeah, my Twitter's the best. Cam Lanzilli or I think it's at Lanzilli Cam, but Cam Lanzilli.
I'll tag it in the comments. All right, Cam, that's a wrap on episode 29 here. I want to thank you for joining and wish the Eckerd the best of luck through the rest of the season.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me. Looking forward to doing it hopefully in a year this time next year, all right?
Sounds good.
Awesome. I appreciate you.